carbon offset program, exhibitors are also doing their part by building more sustainably, reusing portions of their booths, and avoiding single-use material.
It's quite amazing. The Gamescom force continues to grow, and more trees have been planted thanks to donations from attendees. You can find out more about Gamescom's sustainability efforts and find out how to do your part at gamescom.global. And speaking of global, if you can't make it to Germany this week, don't worry, because Gamescom has actually gone worldwide. Gamescom Asia will be taking place in Singapore October 17th to 20th, and tickets are on sale now. The first ever Gamescom Latam took place in Brazil back in June, and it was a huge success, so much so that it's actually returning back in 2025.
All right, I'm excited to go back there. As for what's happening today right here, though, we've got Dragon Ball Sparking Zero up next, followed by a look at Diablo 4's Vessel of Hatred expansion, and later on, Monster Hunter Wilds and Starship Troopers Extermination.
Yeah, and if you think that's a lot, that's just what's happening here in the studio. So let's actually see what's happening out on the show floor.
Oi oi and welcome to Gamescom 2024. We're going to be out here on the show floor today checking out some amazing stuff. We're going to have a look at Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Later, X marks the spot. We're going to have a fantastic look around this, quite frankly, massive Xbox booth. And then later on, when the sun goes down, as does the Dying Light, we're going to take a look at Dying Light, The Beast, the new game announced last night at ONL. So it's going to be a good time, I think. I think you should stick with us, really.
Dragon Ball fans are counting down the days to the release of Sparking Zero, and last night we got a brand new trailer celebrating the fact that it is only 50 days away, but I guess that's 49 now. Here to answer some of our burning questions about Sparking Zero is the games producer Jun Furutani and Mark Karstens, who will be translating. Hi. Welcome. Thank you. People are really excited for this game. People are extremely hyped for it. The new trailer looks awesome. There's one specific shot that I want to call out that people have a lot of questions about. There's a bit where Mr. Satan, or Hercule, is running away from what appears to be Vegeta in his giant Uzuru ape form. How does that fit into the gameplay? Because I feel like the rest of the battles are pretty straightforward. It looks like a fight in Dragon Ball, we get it. This is kind of one-sided, where just, I guess, some context, both in terms of maybe story or maybe gameplay.
まあ、ここに見えるように前のトレーラーでこういうサタンが悟空かベゲタのゴリラフォームから逃げてるところがあるんですけど、まあ、別のトレーラーの別の部分はまあファイトとかそういうのは分かるんですけど、これはちょっと何ですかって、まあ、ストーリーとかゲームプレイに関してこれはどうやってゲームのに入っていますかって。
そうですね、これは普通に対戦のワンシーンを切り取った映像にはなっています。かなりサタンなんかは空を飛べないキャラクター、武空術ができないキャラクターになっているので、地面をこのように走るような形で動くことができるキャラクターになっています。それを奥から大猿が接近して攻撃を畳みかけているっていうワンシーンをちょっと切り取ったシーンになりますので、お客さんの中でもプレイしている中でまさにこういうちょっとリアルに本当に逃げ回ってるシーンみたいなことはリアルタイムに起こりうるものとして、こちら見ていただければと思います。
So this is actually a battle scene? Because you know, you can play Mr. Saturn and Mr. Saturn can fly, so obviously, you know, if you're trying to get away from your opponent, then he has to run. And this is basically a character of Saturn running away from Vegeta, who's trying to attack him.
I think running is probably a good solution in that scenario. The other thing that people have really latched onto is there's a brief glimpse of Goku wearing his Yardrat outfit, which I don't know. I think people are really excited about the prospect of character customization, different outfits. It's already a massive roster. Can you talk a little bit about sort of different outfits or accessories?
まあ、もう一つのシーンはその悟空がヤトレットの服を着てるんですけど、まあ、大きいロスターなんですけど、そのロスターの中にやっぱそういうカスタマイズがあるっていうのはファンが結構嬉しくて、そのコスチュームとかについてもうちょっと教えてもらえますか。そうですね、
結構悟空のこの衣装とかってその原作のストーリーの中でもやっぱり出てきていた衣装だったりもするので、今回お客さんの方でもこのような衣装の状態で戦っていただく、遊んでいただけるような形で実装させていただいています。まだお伝えできないキャラクターだったり、お伝えできない衣装とかあるんですけど、まだ他にも一部のキャラクターではこのように原作で登場した衣装で、遊んでいただけるようなものはございます。
So basically, I mean, this is a scene from the story. This is an outfit that was in the story, and as we're trying to revive the story as much as possible, there will be multiple costumes for multiple characters. We cannot go too much into the details right now. We're sorry about that, but certain characters will have multiple costumes to choose from.
Glad to hear it. That's very exciting. I know people, you know, there's some iconic ones. I want the Piccolo in the Post Boy shirt when he's doing the driving test. Now, it's been a long time since the last Budokai Tenkaichi game. A lot has changed since then. A big thing is obviously the fighting game community, competitive esports. Can you talk a little bit about how sort of that change has influenced Sparking Zero?
前の舞踏会の時よりやっぱそのファイティングゲームのコミュニティが結構大きくなっていろんなトーナメントも出てるし e スポーツが盛んになったんですけどそういう e スポーツの盛んの中新しいスパークゼロはどういうふうにそういうフィーチャーとかあるんですかと。
そうですねこの作品で申しますと、その他の作品でいうドラゴンボールファイターズとかみたいにその e スポーツ的すごい競技性が高くて公平性が高いみたいな形ではなくてどちらかというとドラゴンボールらしさドラゴンボール的な体験をすごい楽しんでいただきたいなということを念頭に作っている作品になります。なのでキャラクターごとに全員が共通して同じ強さであるっていうのではなくて、原作で描かれていたようなその強いキャラクターはより強くなかなか苦戦したキャラクターはちょっと苦戦を強いられるようなそういった形でキャラクターの強さっていうのは調整させていただいていますので、基本的にはそのようなドラゴンボールキャラクターのドラゴンボールのキャラクターのまさにそのキャラクターになりきる体験というかキャラクターが味わえるこの、より自分が強ければより強い体験なかなか難しいキャラクターでも難しい体験みたいなところを本当にキャラクターになりきって遊んでいただけたらなというふうには思っています。ちょっとプラスであるんですけどちょっと一旦ここまでで。
So, first part of the answer. I mean, there are other Dragon Ball games where they have a very good balancing that is important and for esports to have characters that are well balanced so that everybody has the same chance. But this game is more about enjoying being a character. So in this game, strong characters are stronger, and you can play very strong, and characters that are weaker in the story are also weaker, and you can enjoy gameplay where you struggle a little more and it's a little more challenging. So the focus is different. It's not really balancing and having a fair esports fight, but more about being the character and being in the story.
いいですかね。でその上で一応キャラクターごとに、コストみたいなものが割り振られていまして強いキャラは多くコストを消費して、弱いなかなか苦戦したようなキャラクターたちは少し少なめのコストになっていて、その一定のコストの上限の中で、チームを組んでいくっていうような遊び方をすることができて、そうすることで一定程度バランスを取った対戦ができるような形にしています。
So on top of that, there's a point system or cost system for each character. So for example, strong characters have a higher cost and not so strong characters has a lower cost. And as this is a team game, you can combine your team with stronger or weaker characters and have the same cost to balance the odds.
Nice. Now, obviously, games have changed a lot since the last Budokai Tenkaichi. Can you talk a little bit about how Sparking Zero has kind of modernized the old experience? What will longtime players immediately find familiar, and what's something new that might surprise them, just in terms of how it plays?
前のゲームも結構前に出たんだから、その時のファンが今の新しいスパーキングゼロをゲームするときにはこれは昔のようだと考えるところとかこれは新しいなという考えるところがそこら辺はどうですか？
そうですねおっしゃる通りシリーズ作品になっていてそれこそ前作17年前に出ているというところもあってかなり時間が空いてしまっている。だからこそ我々としてはシリーズならではのこのアクション性ゲーム性バトルシステムというところは基本的には踏襲をするような形で作っています。かなり昔遊んでいただいた武道会展開地3と近い操作感で遊んでいただけるようにすごいチューニングしていますし、基本的ななんでしょう吹っ飛ばしてから追撃をするだとか相手の攻撃をうまくカウンタータイミングよくボタンを押してカウンターするだとかそういった基本的なシステムはもうこれまで通り踏襲させていただいているというのは大前提やらせていただいています。これはやっぱりシリーズ正当進化というかシリーズの作品であるということをやっぱりお客さんに分かっていただきたいというのでそうさせていただいていますし、そこに加えてさらに武道会展開シリーズならではというかドラゴンボールらしいアクションというのを楽しんでいただけるようによりなんでしょうリアルタイムの中で攻撃を食らいながらも反撃できる新しいリベンジカウンターというシステムを入れたりですとかちょっと中距離からでも一気に瞬間移動的に攻撃を仕掛けることのできるバニシングアサルトみたいなですね新しいシステムもどんどん入れていくことでよりドラゴンボールらしいアクションを自分の手で生み出せるような進化というのを今回遂げるような形で作らせていただいています。
So of course this is an old IP. The last game is 17 years old, so a lot of change there. But as this is a part of a series, we're very focused on making sure that the experience is the same. So we have a quite similar battle system, and whoever played the old games will be able to control it and have a similar feeling of fighting and how to attack, like punch him and throw him away, and then you dash to him, or like you counter timings, and so will be similar to the old games. But of course, we added a lot of new stuff to make it more Dragon Ball-y, let's say. So there are some real-time actions, like now while you're attacked, you can revenge counter. This is a new system, or you can warp, or like it's vanish assault, we call it, like when you immediately teleport to the enemy and then can attack and stuff like that. So we increased things that we know from the Dragon Ball universe that weren't in the previous game to make it more accessible and a better experience.
Awesome. Well, I'm dying to find out more. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is out October 11th on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Right now, though, there is lots more Gamescom Studio coming up live on IGN, so stick around.
Hello and welcome to Gamescom 2024. I am Simon Cardy with Matt Purslow for IGN, and we have seen an extended look at Indiana Jones and the Great Circle gameplay, a full 15 minutes, couple of different levels, a little look around some of the mechanics, and I think so far, you know, you'd be expecting from Machine Games something that has the essence of a bit of Riddick, a bit of Wolfenstein in there, which you're definitely getting in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. But I think the surprise we got is there's quite a bit of the Hitman games in this, not only in some of the stealth systems, but the way the levels themselves are designed.
Yeah, so as we know, kind of like Indy does disguise himself in the films to get into certain areas, and we're actually seeing a bit of that in the mechanics of the game. So there will be areas that are off limits, and you'll have to get a disguise, very much like Agent 47, and then you'll go in there, and there are actual enemies that you have to be wary of because they might be able to see through your disguise. And then as you're working through those areas, you've kind of got to do stuff that makes you seem like you're part of them. You know, you might want to have to pour a bottle of wine in one instance to make sure that the Nazis don't think that you're anything more than a humble waiter.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of my favorite parts of the Indiana Jones. I'm a huge fan of the films. I just love how funny they are, especially in The Last Crusade, where Indy himself disguises himself as a Nazi, mistakenly gets really close to Hitler and gets him to sign his autograph book. It's a very funny moment. Don't know if we'll get any of that quite in the game, but yeah, as you said, I like the disguise elements that we've seen so far. There's one bit where he's disguised himself as a member of the clergy in the Vatican City to sneak into areas he shouldn't be. I just love that element of it, that sneak into areas, and there's a good level of stealth to this game, which is kind of what I want, because the Uncharted games, which are obviously inspired by Tomb Raider, which in turn inspired by Indiana Jones, very gun heavy. They kind of take the more action hero approach to Nathan Drake, whereas I kind of like that this is more India's core. He's a professor, he's an archaeologist, he's not a super soldier, and we're getting that. And that's not to say that there isn't combat in this game. Outside of stealth, he does like to get himself into a fight, and I know you in particular are quite impressed by the melee system they seem to have in this game.
Yeah, so as you were saying with Uncharted is very gun heavy, and kind of like Nate has lots of different weapons that he can use. It seems like Indy's kind of doing the inverse of that, where he's got his revolver, but actually a lot of the combat seems to be fist fighting, and there's actually, it seems to be, at least what we've seen, a reasonably deep fist fighting system. So you've got your usual left and right hooks, but there's also like a dodge and parry system, and obviously you then combine that with the whip, so you can kind of like whip them from the ankle and pull them over, or you can knock their weapons out their hands, so then you can like dive in to get like your strong right hook in. And so yeah, it feels like definitely it's going to have a little bit of that Uncharted. As you say, you can't escape that because Indy is the start of that genesis. But I like that they're focusing on things that are very not like what other archaeology-style adventure games have done in the past.
No, and I also like there's a great deal of puzzle solving in this game. Like in that 15 minutes we saw, there was at least 3 or 4 different types of puzzles we saw. Of course, you're going to get like the light and mirror puzzle that you kind of see in all of these types of games, but there was also just a good amount of kind of outside of the box puzzle solving. We don't know to an extent how many different ways you can solve certain objectives in this game yet, but a key tool that Indy has is his journal and his camera. So he'll go around levels and take photographs of clues, and then that'll help him not only solve puzzles and work out ways of completing these levels, but also for everything you successfully take a photo of, you get things called adventure points, which you can then use to unlock perks. We've only seen one of those, I think, so far, but I know it was one that you are also a big fan of because it plays into the films in a very funny way.
Yeah, so there is a perk called True Grit, and this is, if you've played Borderlands and you know what the second wind sort of ability in that game is, when you go down, it allows you to come back. It's a second life, essentially. But True Grit, the way it does it, it's perfect. He drops the hat, and then you pick the hat up and put it back on your head. Hopefully it plays the music sting, and then you get your second life and you get to carry on. I think that's just a perfect way of knowing what the tropes of those films are and finding a way to turn that into gameplay. I think that's super smart.
I think they're doing a lot of things to play on your expectations and what you want to see from indie, which is obviously going in, finding relics, like going into tombs, finding all these historical secrets, but also kind of subverting your expectations. Right at the end of the demo is a funny moment where they drop down into this tomb and you're expecting snakes, but it's actually scorpions. A fun little twist. I mean, he's not a fan of bugs either. That's more a Temple of Doom. A lot of bugs in Temple of Doom. But you're expecting snakes. I'm sure there will be snakes in this game. We haven't played it yet. We don't know how it feels. I'm hopeful about it, but they really seem to have like cracked the essence of Indiana Jones. And it does, like, and I said cliche, but kind of does feel like you're playing an unofficial, well, almost an official film of Indiana Jones. They've got it spot on. And that includes even Troy Baker's impersonation, which, you know, if you squint your ears, if you can do that, I don't know if that's the thing, isn't too far away from.
I think he's got it pretty well.
Yeah. One big question people have had since the start of reveal this game is first versus third person. 95% of the game is first person. I'm happy with that. That is what separates it from the likes of Uncharted and Tomb Raider, I think. Otherwise, it would be, to an extent, a bit of a copy of those games and the Hitman games. There are moments where it switches to third person. Some of those, I think, work well, like the climbing, that makes sense, this in third person, but then like every like whip swing you do for like a second cuts to third person. That is a little jarring for me at the moment. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I find the kind of like, there's almost a bit of Deus Ex. If you know the modern Deus Ex games have when you go into cover, it goes into third person, which feels like very natural for it. It feels like it works for the gameplay mechanics. It is obvious in this that when he does the whip crack to swing himself over a chasm, that they want to have that kind of cinematic element of indie. But the moment is so small. It's a second. So you're going out into third person for a second and then back into first person. Whereas with the climbing, you've got a more extended period and it makes more sense of that. I hope that there's a toggle that I can switch that on and off, because quite honestly, I'd rather play the game mostly in first person. It is a game that is clearly built for first person. And I want to play most of the game that way.
Especially because like the details of some of these like levels, it's a beautiful looking game. And I kind of, I think you can be immersed in third person games, but first person does give you that extra little boost to that, I think. And seeing some of these worlds and, holding the journal up in first person, it all feels very tangible. And I like when games feel tangible. And it's another way they're really like encapsulating the feel of the films. I do want to touch on the comedy of it all as well, because I do think it's going to be like, that's what the Hitman side of, like, Hitman is one of the funniest games you can play because it allows you to do funny things. And I think even in the melee combat, you see like funny little like slaps and stuff like that, which is very funny. And also the way you can just pick up weapons from around the world. Like there's a shovel on the floor, pick it up, hit someone with it once, and then that weapon will shatter. So you can't overly abuse that system, but it's fun little ways you can just like pick up, not anything in the world, but pick up little things and just use them like kind of a little bit like, old Valve games would with their physics engine, just kind of making weapons from the world. And I know you saw a little bit of Valve design to it. We don't want to overhype how much design work's going into this, but there is a little bit of that in there, I think.
Yeah, I think the kind of like the providing as many possibilities within a space as possible. They did talk about how there's a lot of linear sections, but then there's a lot of kind of like, I guess you call them wider linear sections, which is where you get to make more of your own choices on how you progress through the mission. And that's where we're going back to the disguise system. You have disguises that work for particular story sections, but then it seems like you get to keep those disguises, and then if you find an area that would require a similar presence, you can switch back into that. And so that combined with the like these slightly more open, a bit like what Chronicles of Riddick had, where it's like, okay, you're in an area, but there's sort of 4 routes that you can see that might go through it, and then, oh, this one is, I can pick up this rolling pin and batter the Nazi with a rolling pin, but then I could maybe grab this guy's gun and fire a few rounds of that off. It's got a bit of that. It's not an immersive sim game in the way that kind of things like what Arcane and Ironstorm back in the day made, but it's got that freedom, which reminds me a little bit of Valve. Valve was always kind of hot on, you're in first person, as long as you can do things around with the environment, you'll find a solution. I'm hoping that's what it's going to get from. That's what it was suggested from what I was seeing.
I'm very excited for this game. Like, I was already very excited for this game as a huge Indiana Jones fan. I'm just glad now we've seen an extended bit of gameplay that there is a lot more to it than I thought. I thought I was just getting a first-person Uncharted, but I like these stealth elements, the disguise elements. A lot more deeper systems than I thought maybe this game would have. And yeah, I can't wait to see more, really. Yeah, fantastic.
Diablo 4 was one of last year's most addictive games, and if you thought you were done, they're about to pull you right back in. Here to tell us about the upcoming Vessel of Hatred expansion, I'm joined by Brett Gibson, Game Director, and Tiffany K. Watt, Production Director. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Let's talk about Vessel of Hatred, coming to Diablo 4 October 8th, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. And I believe at the show here at Gamescom, you're showing a new trailer for the Pale Hand Mercenaries.
Yes.
What do we need to know about this crew?
Oh my God. First off, we wanted to find a way to allow players that play specific classes to round out their builds with certain powers that you might not actually have in that class specifically. And so, like, for example, if you're playing a Sorc, you might want to have something a little more tanky as a part of your kit. And so Mercenaries is a really great way of being to hire and bring followers along that fit those gaps.
Yeah, there's a few reasons I love Mercenaries. I mean, I've been playing Diablo for a long time. Diablo 2 always had a mercenary with me, obviously, in Diablo 3. So really, really excited to bring this feature to Diablo 4. I'm personally a little scared when I go down into the dungeons, so having a friend with me makes it a little bit friendlier. And like Brent was saying, being able to customize your playstyle, and no matter what build you have, whatever class you're playing, there's going to be a mercenary that you can customize to really, I think, enhance what you're doing, and being able to switch them on the fly, and just all the features that it brings to the table is really exciting.
So I believe there are 4 mercenaries. I have the names here. Let's see what I can do. Rahir,
Yep.
the shield bearer. Sly Aldkin, the cursed child.
Yes.
Variana, the berserker crone, and Subo, the bounty hunter.
Yeah.
And I believe you encounter them as you complete quests in Vessel of Hatred.
Yeah.
Is it a specific order, or can you find them on your own, or how does that work?
You can find them on your own. You're going to find one during the campaign.
Okay.
But the really special thing about this is that we just didn't put them into the game. We actually wanted to build them out as characters. So they all have their own side quests that really lean into their human story, which we won't spoil anything here today. But they're wonderful human stories for each individual one. And the character development in Diablo 4 I think is super top notch, and I'm really excited to see it in this feature.
Yeah, it's awesome that we can continue to bring the world of Sanctuary alive through these characters, and as you're acquiring them, as you're playing through the game, is learning more about them and their backgrounds, and bringing that little bit of role playing into your gameplay.
You'll just have one of them with you at a time? You're not rolling with the whole squad?
There's a couple different ways that you can bring them in. One, if you're playing by yourself, you can bring them in as a follower, so they'll be running around the world with you. But we also have a reinforcements feature, which is no matter how many people you have in your party, you can assign them to come in and use their special powers under certain conditions that you